Let me ask you something real quick. What's the one thing you own that nobody can buy, borrow, or take unless you hand it over? It's your value. That's your currency. That's your power. That's the thing that makes somebody either step up when they see you or play themselves when they don't. See, too many people think value is about how you look, what you wear, what kind of car you pull up in, or how many followers you got. But the truth is, value ain't in the surface. It's in how you move, how you think, how you carry yourself when the world tests you. And here's the part people don't like to hear. Sometimes it ain't the man that's lowering your value, it's you. Not because you're not worthy, but because you're handing over your worth without realizing it. You're letting habits, patterns, and choices dim your own light. Tonight, I'm not here to sugarcoat it. I'm here to lay out 4 things, 4 killers that take your value and put it on clearance. And if you don't check them, I don't care how beautiful you are, how loyal you are, or how much you give, a man will never see you the way you deserve to be seen. When you move through life without self-respect, you hand over your power before the conversation even starts. A man can feel that energy before you even speak a word. It's in how you walk into the room, how you look at yourself in the mirror, how you set boundaries with people who test you. If you don't believe in your own worth, you don't demand it from anyone else. And when a man senses that, he knows he can play the game however he wants because the rules don't exist. Self-respect isn't just about saying, I deserve better. It's about living every day in a way that shows you mean it. If you keep breaking your own standards, apologizing for existing, shrinking so others can shine, you're teaching the world to treat you the same way. A man respects what you respect in yourself. Think about it. If you don't hold yourself with value, he's not going to hand you something you won't even claim for yourself. That's why so many women get caught up wondering why they keep meeting men who don't commit, men who lie, men who take advantage. But it's not just about the men, it's about the mirror. If you accept crumbs, you'll never get the meal. If you allow someone to cross lines without consequence, you're telling them those lines were never real in the first place. A man isn't going to respect boundaries you don't enforce, and the absence of that respect is the slow death of how he sees you. Self-respect is deeper than clothes, money, or status. It's about the core of who you are and how you carry that. You can dress fly, look beautiful, have everything on the outside put together, but if you don't value your voice, your peace, your body, your time, then all that surface work falls apart, because a man who's really watching doesn't just see the surface, he feels the energy underneath it. And he notices when you agree to things you don't want to do, when you tolerate what you said you wouldn't, when you act like you cool with disrespect just to keep the connection alive. And the second he sees that, the value he placed on you drops, because he knows you don't even protect yourself. Respect for yourself is also about how you handle silence. When you know your worth, you don't need to explain it to everybody. You don't chase down validation. You don't beg somebody to see you. You stand firm in the fact that whether they recognize it or not, you're solid. Without self-respect, you find yourself over-explaining, over-giving, overextending, and a man looks at that and thinks, she needs me more than I need her. That's when the balance shifts, and once the balance is off, it's hard to ever get it back. Because the truth is, relationships thrive on mutual respect. But if one person doesn't respect themselves, the other person ends up taking the dominant role, consciously or unconsciously, and the value of the connection fades. A lack of self-respect shows up in the smallest ways. It shows when you allow phone calls that come too late in the night but still answer. It shows when you say you're not okay with certain behavior, but you stay when that behavior continues. It shows when you sacrifice your dreams to play a supporting role in someone else's story while your own goes unwritten. Every time you abandon yourself to hold on to someone else, your value in their eyes slips further away. A man might not even articulate it, but deep down he feels it. He knows he doesn't have to give his best because you've shown him you'll stay even when he gives you less. Self-respect also determines how you move when someone disrespects you. Everybody gets tested. Life will always throw people your way who push buttons, cross lines, or try to see how much they can get away with. The difference is in how you respond. A woman with self-respect isn't loud or reckless with it. She just moves with clarity. She doesn't need to curse somebody out. She doesn't need to break down in tears every time someone plays with her boundaries. She just knows when to step back, when to walk away, and when to make it clear that her time is not to be wasted. And when you don't have that discipline, you end up staying in cycles that kill your spirit. And a man sees that weakness as permission to keep repeating the cycle. Another layer to this is how you talk to yourself. You can't carry self-respect if your inner dialogue is full of doubt, shame, and comparison. If every time you look in the mirror you tear yourself apart, you're setting the stage for someone else to treat you the same way. Men feel that energy. If you always downplaying yourself, if you can't take a compliment, if you're always seeking outside reassurance, it reads as insecurity. And insecurity, when left unchecked, eats away at your value, because what makes someone magnetic isn't perfection, it's conviction. If you walk like you know who you are, people gravitate toward that. If you're always unsure, always questioning your place, people sense it and adjust their behavior accordingly. Lack of self-respect also breeds desperation. Desperation is loud, even when you think you're hiding it. It shows when you accept situations that go against your peace, when you tolerate being an option instead of a priority, when you settle for attention instead of waiting for intention. A man can feel when you're moving out of desperation, and it makes him pull back. Not because he necessarily wants to hurt you, but because desperation is unattractive. It communicates that you don't believe you can do better, so you're willing to take whatever is offered, and that makes it easier for him to offer less. It's not about perfection, it's about standards. A lack of self-respect often means you don't even have a clear vision of what you stand for. If you haven't defined what you deserve, if you haven't written down what's non-negotiable, then anybody can come into your life and rewrite those rules for you. A man respects a woman who respects herself enough to know what she won't allow. If you can't articulate your own boundaries, you'll always be at the mercy of his. And here's the truth. Self-respect is contagious. When you respect yourself, you inspire respect. When you lack it, you invite disrespect. That's why so many women wonder why they're being treated like they're disposable. It's because they've been moving like they're replaceable. If you carry yourself like you're valuable, a man has no choice but to acknowledge that. If you don't, you'll constantly feel undervalued, not realizing that the biggest shift starts with you. When you lean too heavy on a man for your sense of self, you start to give away pieces of your independence without even realizing it. Dependency in its natural form isn't bad. Capitalism is meant to connect, to need each other in certain ways, but when that need becomes the entire foundation of who you are, it creates an imbalance that kills your value in his eyes. A man might appreciate being needed, but he doesn't respect being idolized to the point where your happiness lives and dies on his presence. When you can't breathe without him, when you can't make decisions without his input, when you move like your life is incomplete unless he validates you, you shift from being a partner to being a weight, and a weight eventually feels heavy no matter how much he once cared. Dependency overdrive shows up in subtle ways first. It shows when you're constantly waiting for his approval before you move forward on something you already know you want to do. It shows when you abandon your own goals, your own friendships, your own individuality just to orbit around his world. At first, a man might enjoy the attention, but over time he starts to see it as a drain. Because if you don't stand on your own 2 feet, he feels like he has to carry you. And no matter how strong someone is, no man wants to carry another adult's entire identity. That's not partnership, that's parenting. And when a man starts feeling like he's parenting, desire dies, attraction fades, and respect leaves the room. When you depend too much on a man for validation, you rob yourself of your own voice. You start asking questions not because you don't know the answer, but because you want to hear him confirm that you're right. You start dressing, speaking, and acting not from your own sense of authenticity, but from what you think will keep him interested. That type of dependency eats away at your essence, and a man can sense that you're no longer bringing your true self to the table. You've replaced authenticity with approval seeking, and that's when the connection starts to feel one-sided. He's no longer connecting with you, he's connecting with the version of you that's been shaped to please him. And deep down, even if he doesn't say it, that makes you less valuable because you've shown him you can't exist outside his perception. Dependency overdrive also shows up in how you handle space. A healthy relationship needs room to breathe. A man needs moments to himself, time to work, space to grow just like you do. But when you've tied your sense of worth to him, those gaps feel like rejection. Suddenly, if he doesn't answer the phone quick enough, you feel unloved. If he wants to go out with friends without you, you feel abandoned. If he's quiet because he's processing his own thoughts, you feel ignored. And when you react like that over and over, it drains him. It makes him feel like he can't just be himself without having to constantly reassure you that you're okay. And while reassurance has its place, when it becomes constant, it feels like babysitting someone's emotions instead of building with an equal. There's also a financial aspect to dependency that can shift dynamics in ways people don't want to admit. When you become overly reliant on a man to provide everything for you, not because of partnership or shared agreement, but because you haven't built your own foundation, it changes the respect level. Even if he's willing to provide, a part of him recognizes when you don't have your own resources, your own ambition, your own hustle. It starts to feel less like he's sharing life with someone and more like he's sponsoring someone. And sponsorship isn't love, it's control. And once control enters the picture, the relationship is no longer about mutual respect, it's about power. He has it, you don't. And that imbalance eventually kills attraction. Emotionally, dependency overdrive creates a cycle of neediness that pushes him away. You start seeking reassurance so often that your words don't even hit the same anymore. If every day you're asking, do you love me? Do you care? Am I enough? You might think you're opening up, but in reality, you're draining the meaning out of those questions. Love doesn't thrive in constant interrogation. It thrives in trust, in the ability to know your value even when it's not being spoken every second. A man doesn't want to feel like his love is on trial every day. When you make him prove it endlessly, it doesn't matter how much he gave at the start. Eventually, he'll get tired of giving because the well of your need can't be filled by him alone. This overdependency also cuts off your ability to inspire him. A part of what makes a woman magnetic to a man is her ability to bring something fresh into his life, new ideas, new perspectives, new energy. But when your world becomes so tied up in his, you stop being a source of inspiration and instead become a reflection of him. You repeat his thoughts, you copy his moves, you echo his ambitions. At first, it might feel like alignment, but over time, it reads as emptiness. He doesn't feel like he's learning from you, growing with you, or being challenged by you. He feels like he's carrying the entire vision while you just ride along. That imbalance kills value because what keeps people connected is growth, and growth requires two individuals, not one shadow. Another piece of dependency overdrive is how it affects your confidence. When all your self-worth is measured by his attention, your confidence rises and falls with his moods. If he's affectionate, you're glowing. If he's distant, you're crumbling. That inconsistency makes you unstable in his eyes, and instability is something most men pull away from. It's not that they expect perfection, but they respect steadiness. A woman who can hold her ground, no matter what's happening around her, feels powerful. A woman who collapses every time she feels a shift in his energy communicates that her foundation is weak. And no man wants to be the only thing keeping someone else from falling apart, because it turns love into labor. Dependency also blocks your ability to walk away from what doesn't serve you. When you've convinced yourself you can't live without him, you'll tolerate situations you know are beneath you. You'll stay in disrespect, you'll endure neglect, you'll accept betrayal because you told yourself leaving is impossible. And once a man realizes you won't leave no matter what he does, the respect is gone. He knows he can act without consequence, and that kills your value in his eyes because value is tied to scarcity. When something is rare, people protect it. When something is always available, no matter how it's treated, it loses its worth. All of this comes down to balance. A relationship should be a space where two people bring their fullness to the table. Dependency is natural in doses. We all lean on the people we love, but dependency overdrive takes you from leaning to clinging. And once you start clinging, you're no longer seen as a partner, you're seen as a burden. The man who once admired you starts to question whether you bring balance or whether you just take energy. And when he decides it's the latter, the value you hold in his mind starts to disappear. One of the quickest ways to lose your value in front of a man is to neglect your growth. People are drawn to movement, to evolution, to energy that is alive and expanding. When you stop growing, you start shrinking. Even if you think you're standing still, life doesn't stay neutral. Everything is either moving forward or sliding backward. And when a man looks at you and sees that you've stopped pushing yourself, stop feeding your mind, stop reaching for more, the light that once pulled him in begins to dim. Growth isn't just about careers or money, though those matter. It's about spirit, about intellect, about how you're constantly learning, refining, becoming. The moment you get comfortable thinking that what you are today is enough to carry you forever, you lose the sharpness that made you captivating in the first place. Men respect women who are invested in themselves, women who don't just talk about dreams but take steps toward them, who don't just complain about circumstances but challenge themselves to rise above them. Neglecting growth means you stop nurturing that part of you that makes you dynamic. You start to rely on the old versions of yourself, your looks, your charm, your routine conversations, and eventually those wear thin because no matter how good you look, no matter how much chemistry you had at the start, if you're not evolving, the connection begins to feel recycled. A man wants to feel like being with you is a journey, not a dead end. Neglecting growth shows up in the way you think. If your conversations never change, if you're always gossiping, always circling the same small ideas, always focused on things that don't stretch the mind, it becomes uninspiring. At the beginning, he might laugh, he might entertain it, but over time, if you're not bringing new insights, new perspectives, new knowledge to the table, he'll stop seeing you as someone who feeds his spirit. And when a man doesn't feel fed by your presence, he begins to see you as background instead of center. People crave stimulation, not just physical, but mental and emotional. If you can't provide that because you've neglected your own growth, he will start searching for that spark elsewhere. It's also about emotional growth. A woman who refuses to face her own patterns, who keeps repeating the same mistakes in relationships, who avoids accountability, shows that she's stuck. Neglecting growth in this era means you keep dragging old wounds into new situations, blaming everyone else while refusing to do the inner work. That creates a cycle of drama, and while some men might entertain it for a while, most men lose respect for it quickly. Growth requires healing, reflection, and the courage to change. Without it, you become predictable in the worst way. You react the same, argue the same, hurt the same, forgive the same, until the relationship feels like a loop, and no man finds value in being trapped in a loop. There's also a financial layer. While not every woman has to be rich or chasing millions, neglecting growth means you stop striving to be independent to at least build stability for yourself. A man respects a woman who can hold her own, who isn't waiting around for him to save her, who's building her own foundation while they build together. If you're not developing your skills, not investing in your future, not thinking about what comes next, you communicate that you're content with being carried, and being carried isn't attractive long term. A man who's ambitious wants someone beside him who matches that ambition in her own lane, not someone who's watching from the sideline. Neglecting growth also impacts how you see the world. When you stop reading, stop learning, stop traveling, stop exposing yourself to new environments, your perspective shrinks. You start moving in circles instead of lines. And a man who's hungry for life will notice that. If his world is expanding and yours is staying the same, the gap between you will widen. At first, he might try to bring you along, but eventually he'll realize you're not interested in expanding with him. And once he realizes that, your value in his eyes starts to fade because he doesn't feel like he's walking with a partner. He feels like he's dragging someone who's content with being stuck. Neglecting growth shows up in daily habits too. It's in how you take care of your health, how you manage your time, how you build discipline. If you let yourself go completely, physically, emotionally, mentally, because you think you already got the man and don't need to keep working on yourself, it creates complacency. Complacency is dangerous in relationships because it turns excitement into boredom. At the beginning, everything feels alive because you're both bringing your best selves. But if you let yourself fall into laziness, if you stop caring about how you show up, if you stop nurturing your own passions, you become predictable in ways that don't inspire. A man values consistency, but he also values growth, and those are not the same thing. On another level, neglecting growth impacts your energy. Growth gives you a certain glow, a vibrancy that can't be faked. When you're learning, pursuing, developing, your energy shifts. You're excited, you're motivated, you're attractive in a way that goes beyond the surface. When you stop growing, your energy becomes stagnant. You start carrying a dullness, even if everything on the outside looks fine. And men feel that dullness. They may not always be able to explain it, but they know when someone is alive with purpose and when someone is coasting with no direction. Coasting lowers your value because it communicates that you don't see yourself as worthy of becoming more. Growth is also about resilience. Life is going to test you, and how you respond determines how people see you. If you neglect growth, you respond to challenges the same way you always have. Breaking down, giving up, pointing fingers, instead of adapting and rising. A man watching you will notice if you crumble under pressure or if you grow from it. And if he sees that you're unwilling to evolve, unwilling to learn from pain, unwilling to strengthen yourself, he'll start to see you as fragile instead of powerful. Fragile might inspire protection at first, but over time it creates frustration because no one wants to constantly protect someone who refuses to build their own armor. Neglecting growth affects intimacy too. Attraction isn't just physical, it's rooted in curiosity. A man wants to keep discovering layers to you, but if you've stopped adding layers to yourself, there's nothing left to discover. The relationship plateaus not because love disappeared, but because your personal evolution froze. If he already knows everything about you and you're not learning, exploring, or shifting, he loses that sense of mystery and inspiration. Growth keeps the fire alive because it keeps him on his toes, constantly intrigued by the new versions of you that show up over time. And maybe the deepest level of this is spiritual growth. If you're not seeking higher understanding, not questioning, not aligning yourself with something bigger than the material world, you risk being shallow in his eyes. A man with depth wants someone who also has depth, someone who can speak to the soul, not just the surface. Neglecting growth here means you stay attached to the shallow things, status, appearance, attention, while never developing wisdom. And wisdom is where true value lies. A woman who grows spiritually, who grounds herself in her own truth, commands a respect that never fades. Without it, you're temporary excitement at best, not lasting impact. Tolerating disrespect is one of the fastest ways to kill your value in front of a man. Because the moment you allow someone to cross lines without consequence, you've told them those lines don't actually exist. Respect is the foundation of any relationship, and once that foundation cracks, everything built on top of it starts to crumble. When you tolerate disrespect, you silently teach a man that he doesn't need to take you seriously, that he can test limits, that he can treat you below your worth, and you'll still show up the same. You might enjoy the benefits of that at first, but over time he loses the very thing that makes him value you, his fear of losing you. Disrespect doesn't always come in loud, obvious forms. It's not just about cheating, lying, or name calling. Sometimes it's the subtle ways he disregards your voice, the way he ignores your boundaries, the way he dismisses your feelings as if they're not valid. Sometimes it's in the way he takes your presence for granted, assuming you'll always be there no matter what. The problem isn't that men test boundaries. The problem is when those boundaries get tested and you fold. Every time you allow it, you chip away at your own value in his eyes. Because respect is built on consistency, not words. If you say one thing but tolerate another, he learns that your standards are flexible. And once your standards are flexible, his effort becomes optional. When you accept disrespect, you become predictable in the wrong way. He knows exactly how far he can push you before you finally react. And once he knows that, he'll live right up to that limit. It becomes a cycle where he gives you just enough to keep you there, but not enough to truly respect you. And the crazy part is, the longer you stay in that cycle, the more he loses admiration for you. He might keep you around, but not because he treasures you, because he knows you've taught him he doesn't have to treasure you to keep you. That's the harsh truth about tolerating disrespect. You think you're keeping the relationship alive, but what you're really keeping alive is the death of your value. A man respects what you enforce, not what you announce. You can say you won't tolerate certain things, but the moment you allow them, your words mean nothing. And a man pays attention to that. He watches not just how you react to him, but how you allow other people to treat you. If you let your friends walk over you, if you let family disrespect your time, if you let strangers talk reckless and you never stand firm, he notices. He knows that if you don't demand respect in those areas, you won't demand it from him either. And when he sees that weakness, he might not exploit it at first, but over time he starts moving with less care because you've shown him you'll absorb it. Disrespect also eats away at attraction. Desire is rooted in admiration, and admiration can't survive where there's no respect. A man can't truly admire someone who allows themselves to be mistreated. He might enjoy your body, he might enjoy your company, but deep down the admiration fades the moment he sees you tolerate less than you deserve. That's why so many relationships look fine on the outside but lack real depth on the inside, because the man doesn't truly admire her anymore. And without admiration, love loses its fire. Tolerating disrespect also kills trust, not just in him, but in yourself. When you constantly accept treatment you know is wrong, you start to doubt your own judgment. You stop trusting your instincts because every time they tell you to walk away, you silence them. That self-betrayal shows in your energy. You start second-guessing yourself in conversations. You start standing tall in your opinions. You hesitate to speak your truth. A man feels that shift he feels when you don't fully trust yourself, and it lowers his respect because confidence is attractive and self-betrayal is not. On another level, tolerating disrespect shifts the power dynamic. Relationships should feel like partnerships where both people hold equal weight. But when you allow repeated disrespect to balance tips, he holds the power, not because he deserves it, but because you gave it away by refusing to enforce boundaries. Power imbalances never stay hidden. They reveal themselves in how he speaks to you and how he prioritizes you and how he treats you in public versus private. And the more he realizes you won't challenge that imbalance, the less effort he puts in. Why would he pour into something that already accepts being empty? There's also the issue of tolerance becoming identity. If you spend enough time allowing disrespect, it stops looking like a moment, it starts looking like who you are. People begin to define you by what you accept, and men especially notice this. If he sees you let other men from your past disrespect you, if he hears stories of how you stayed in situations that broke you down, he starts to view you through that lens. Even if he's not consciously judging, subconsciously he thinks she puts up with too much. That thought alone can lower your value in his mind before you even realize.